Freddie's talking about changing your physiology. Get up, move a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right, so normally I don't do any PowerPoints or any presentations, but after listening to Eddie about, touching all the different bases and stuff, I'm actually going to start with a 3.5-minute video. All right, and it's going to kick off. And I just want you to pay really close attention to what goes on in this video, and then we're going to talk about how that connects to where you guys are or where we all are in chiropractic. Okay, is that it?
The series is called How Do I Know? And a lot of times when people hear the phrase, how do I know, the next thing they say is what? How do I know what? But the key really isn't to know what, the key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just gonna show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
When you guys are given a report of findings, when you guys are given an elevator speech, when you guys are communicating with anybody, how big is your why? What's the difference? When you go in and you have to do a report of findings, what's your energy? Freddie's talking about passion. Everybody's talking about passion and commitment, communication skills, drive, excitement. So what are you doing? What's your why? What's your why? Why are you here? What's the purpose of you being in chiropractic? I was talking to Edwin, about running a school and what goes on, and to Neil. And you know what? Their why is so big that all the stuff, all the crap that they have to deal with day in and day out that nobody sees becomes okay because their why is so big. Their why is so big. And you know what? People ask, like when Kathy and I travel all over the world, they go, well, why do you do that? Well, I don't know who said it today, but my goal is to make sure that every man, woman, and child has the opportunity to get a chiropractic adjustment or chiropractic education, whatever they prefer. That's the mission of our life force. That's what I do. And it's so big that there's no distance that gets in the way. There's no audience too small or too big that I won't speak to. You know, and you really, when your why is so important, you know, a lot of times, I remember early in my life in speaking, if I'd speak on a Sunday morning and there were 6 people in a room, I would get pissed because I got something really good to say and people need to hear my words. And why the hell are only 6 people? And then I got to the point where, you know what? The people that are supposed to hear me are here. The words that are coming out of my mouth is exactly what you need to hear right now. What you do with them is your choice. What you do with your why is your choice. You could give this whole weekend lip service and it wouldn't mean anything. You know, it's like when we do ropes courses or firewalks. Anybody who's ever done a ropes course in here? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so when you do a ropes course, you can either do it as a jungle gym and go try, you know, like break through your fears of heights and balance and all that crap. Or you can use it as a metaphor for your life and how you run it, what you're going to do different. Because everything you do, anything you do in life is how you do everything in life. So how people respond on a ropes course is exactly the way they respond in their life. The fears that they come up against in a ropes course is exactly the fears that they're going to come up against in their life. You know, it's a participation game. It's like when I asked everybody to stand up. I'm not going to, you know, point out people. How many of you chose to sit in your seats because it was more comfortable? You know, what they say, you know, what are the 2 biggest fears? Of not being loved. And what's the other one? Not being good enough. So you sit down because you're afraid people are going to look at you. You sit down because maybe they won't love what I have to say. You sit down because maybe I don't look the way I think I should look. You know what? As soon as you get the chance to take yourself seriously enough that you are, and Freddie said it, you are the most important person in your life. You're number 1. That's it. Nobody else is more important. You know, here's my question. Whether you're a chiropractic student or chiropractor, who's the best chiropractor in this room? Who's the best chiropractor you know? Anybody? All right, if you didn't say me, you need to go back to school. You need to train your brain because you know what? Who in the world wants to go to the second best doctor? Who in the world wants to go to number 5? All right, so you know, until you appreciate how good you are, how great you are, the gift that you have to give to the world. And you know, sometimes we spend so much time trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. I got to get my technique down so perfect, so when I make that adjustment, there's a whole, perfection's a friggin' joke. I remember there was one guy 30 years ago, DE, who was a Grostic practitioner, and he got his body put in a body cast, so the only thing he could do was the triceps pull, nothing else would move. It's not the damn remember that? You remember that story? I don't even remember who it was. Maybe it was Botwell's brother. But the point I'm making is if you wait for perfection, you miss all of life. Because when do you get to perfection? Anybody? Can you ever achieve perfection? You can't. There's always room. So rather than perfection, why don't you just settle for progress? Why don't you just settle, like Tony Robbins used to say, constant and never-ending improvement? Right? Why don't you promise yourself that you will never go to sleep as dumb as you woke up? Right? Like Freddie was talking about reading a book. Right? How many of you read every day? Every day. And I'm not talking about the comic strips. Right? Even if it's 2 pages, it means that you're going to sleep smarter than you woke up. And Joe Dispenza says the only way your brain grows, the only way, is by having new experiences or learning something new? You choose. And you know what? Like Freddie, I want to be around for a couple hundred years. I want my brain to be there with me. Because I have people, I'm sure we all know people that are in their 90s where their body's there, but their brain's not. I want to be like Rose in my 90s where her brain's there. I'm not so sure of the body, but the brain's definitely there. Sharp like a tack. Right? So I want you to start thinking about that. You know, you do want to think about, Ray said he retired in 78. Any chiropractor that I know that's been successful and loves practice retired the day they went into practice. I've never worked a day in my life. And if you ask my son Josh, he'll confirm that now. It never works. But the thing is, I get back into the office to relax. Like we travel all over the world. When I come back into the office, oh, thank God. Because I'm centered again. It's home. There's nothing that replaces putting your hands on somebody and making that adjustment. There's nothing that replaces that life. Because my why is so big that I can go any place in the world and make a difference in it. Through chiropractic. Through touching people. And just like Edwin, you know you can adjust so many people, but when you start exciting students and you start exciting other chiropractors, then you start adjusting hundreds of thousands of people every day. All right? So how excited are you? How big is your why? And here's another line I heard Guy use, and it comes from a football player, I think a football coach. His name was Nick Saban, and I think he's the coach of Alabama. Now, anybody that knows me, they should be saying, how the frig does he know anything about sports? You know, because I think in football, the home runs really make a difference. So anyway, what he says, and I want you all to think about this, and especially you students, all right? You deserve, he was giving this speech before a championship game. It was the big game. He goes, you guys deserve to be here. Every one of you put in your time, energy, and effort to be here, to be a chiropractor. But you're entitled to nothing. You're entitled to nothing. Now, this millennial generation and Generation X, that really hurts because most of these kids, feel they're entitled to everything. But when you come out of school, you deserve that piece of paper that says you're a chiropractor. You guys in practice and girls in practice, you have that piece of paper that says you're a chiropractor. That doesn't entitle you to a successful practice. That doesn't entitle you to an easy go. It doesn't entitle you to anything. It's just saying you got here. And if you're willing to take it and start to run with it and start to use it and take the tools that we talked about all this weekend, you know, how many years did you spend learning how to communicate? How many years did you learn how to speak to an audience or to be on TV or be in front of a camera? It's not a one-shot deal, all right? It's that constant, never-ending improvement. You know, and it's not the fear of talking in public that scares people. It's the fear of what people think about you talking in public that scares you. And when you get to the point where you really don't give a crap what people think about you, you can do anything. And the coolest thing about being a chiropractor is people think you're crazy already, and you can get away with all sorts of crap. You know, the biggest thing is you have to step out of that comfort zone. You know, and it's not, once you take that first step out, you got to keep moving. You know, when we're doing a firewalk, the funniest thing is every once in a while we'll get somebody to come up and do this. It's like testing the water in the pool. You can't test the water. It's 1,800 degrees. You know, but what happens when you make your first step? You don't say, you go, you just keep moving with it. All right? How's that with life? You ever try and make a change? All right? Like Eric Plasker says, you know, change is easy. Thinking about change really screws you up. That's what's hard. Right? It's taking that first damn step. It's being willing, like when I do a firewalk, it's knowing that there's something on the other side that's so important, so big, that I'm willing to risk stepping out of my comfort zone to walk across it to get to that goal. Take that into your practice. Take that into your schooling. What are you going for? What's that why that's on the other side? What's that why that you're going through school for, that when you get out, you got the piece of paper? What are you going to do with it? For those of us that have been in practice for years, do you still have your why? Or do you still get up and go, shit, got to go into the office again, got to deal with my crazy staff, I don't want to do this, I got to buy food. You know, or are you excited every morning that you get up and go, thank God, they're giving me the opportunity to turn on life. How many people have that opportunity? How many people have that opportunity? To me, that's so magical. And where else can you go where you get to choose what you want to do? You get to choose your own hours. You get to choose the type of people that you want to take care of. Right? But you know where those choices come from. You got to decide. I remember when I first got into practice, I was trying to be like all my mentors. And I would get very frustrated every time I came home from Atlanta because I wasn't doing what all these people were doing. You know, and then I learned about chiropractic math. Anybody know what chiropractic math is? All right, when somebody tells you the volume of your income, you divide by 2 and subtract 10. And 10 is a small number. All right, so I learned chiropractic math. But anyway, it wasn't until I decided, like back then I was, and I still am, a very straight, you know, all I use is my hands in my practice, you know, and that's it. But back in the early 80s, when you practice that way, if you charged any amount of money, you couldn't be straight because straight people never charge money. So it took me a few years to realize that wealthy people deserve to get adjusted just as much as people that don't have any money. And I happen to be in the most expensive neighborhood in New York City, which is on the Upper West Side on Central Park West. So I was trying to take care of people who had no money, and like one of my friends said, you know, you're trying to set up a Kmart practice in a Bloomingdale's neighborhood. He goes, so you're getting these Kmart people coming in because your fees are so cheap, but they're so uncomfortable in the store, you know, in the neighborhood that they don't want to stay. And then the Bloomingdale's people come in and go, there's got to be something wrong with this, it's too cheap. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So at that moment, I decided I want to take care of wealthy people. It's really nice having people that can afford your fees. And I've never, ever turned anybody away, but my perfect patient is someone that can afford my Upper West Side fees. Right? And my fees are really reasonable considering what my rent is. And speaking about fees, anybody ever have issues with, you know, charging and money and talking about fees? Nobody's, if you're not raising your hand, you're all lying. And your students, you'll get it. So anyway, what I do now, what I started doing, this was years ago, when a patient, and we didn't get a lot, would complain about my fee, I go, listen, you've been here for a few weeks now, right? And you're not taking your inhaler, you're not using your asthma inhaler anymore, right? How long you on that inhaler? 12 years? Okay, so you're not using it. What's that worth? Oh, it's priceless, doc, it's great. I go, you're right. So you really can't afford to pay me what an adjustment's worth. So I'm just charging for my rent, and it's pretty fucking high, friggin' high. And that's it, and case closed. So what are you bringing to the table? You know, so I had this whole issue back then where, oh, you know, the adjustment's priceless, and it's this and this. But if you charge more, and this is like in you know, the early 80s, if you charge more than $15 an adjustment, you're ripping people off. So when I started valuing it more, and I started explaining it more to my staff, and they started taking ownership of it, all of a sudden, our fees started going up, and our fees started going up, and our fees, fees didn't go, our collections started coming in. We started getting closer and closer to our charges. That all comes full circle back to your why. Why are you doing this? What's in it for you? How are you going to change the world? What's the legacy you're going to leave when you're not here anymore? When you get up to the pearly gates, you're going to say, well, I was on the planet, I was here, I took up space. Or you get up, I made a difference in the world. I touched people's lives. I chose to step out of my comfort zone and make sure that every man, woman, and child has the ability to receive a chiropractic adjustment and or chiropractic education. And when Edwin, and we've talked about the Rubicon, that's what we're focusing on. It's the 8 most principled schools in the world getting together for the sole purpose of making sure every person on the planet has the opportunity to receive a chiropractic adjustment and or chiropractic education. Thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it.